Hi everybody, Rick here. Welcome to Cardano Live on a nice Friday afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well. I have Bourke Floyd with me here today on Cardano Live. He's going to talk about his Project Catalyst proposal, CardanoPy. But before we get into that, let's do some introductions. As Bourke and I were talking, we found out we have some common background here. Surprisingly, it's fun. It's a small world, isn't it?
Yep. For
Yeah,
sure.
it is. Yeah, it is. So you're a software engineer, game engineer, and so what's your background? Let's talk about that for a bit.
Well, I was in the Navy for 5.5 years as a navigation electronics technician, and then after that, I had an opportunity to become a software developer for writing like military simulations for the submarine type stuff that I was doing, like missile launching systems. And I basically spent a good part of like 7 years just writing games for the military and military simulations. And I have actually a pretty cool video on my YouTube channel that shows off some of that stuff. But yeah, and after that I got into the game industry more directly and started doing mobile games and never turned back. And I really been very blessed, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and the reason that's a really cool background there is I was also in the Navy myself as well, and I knew folks who did exactly what Bourke did. My friend Kevin, I was a destroyer guy. Kevin was on destroyers with me. You were a submarine guy.
Yep, that's right.
And he got out of the Navy, and after 6 years in the Navy, he had some college money. He went to Virginia Tech, got his computer science degree, software engineering, and then he went to work for a software, almost like a video game company, and building simulations for things like navigation and giant military video games for training, so that you could do training while you're ashore or training without being out at sea, and it would simulate what you're actually doing. It would simulate all the controls as if you're actually doing stuff, and it was great. It's great training for people before they actually go out and do the real world stuff. It's a good way to get their feet wet, per se.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yes.
also like work through all the different scenarios, and then also like save the military a lot of money, because like instead of launching an actual missile, they can simulate launching a missile.
Yeah, you can practice simulate launching the missile, which saves fuel and keeps you from having to make big things go boom and stuff like that. That's always
Exactly.
cool. Yep. Yeah, I know what you mean, because I myself, I was an undersea warfare command and control guy, former sonar guy as well. You deal with so many advanced and complex electronic systems in the military. People would be surprised. They would go, "Oh yeah, there's a lot of advanced and complex systems." And then after I left the military, I became a systems engineer up at Progeny Systems, and I worked with a lot of submariners, and those were some of the best guys in the world to work with, because they developed this culture of excellence. Right?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
100% know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, you were
I
right
lived
there.
it. It was.
Yeah.
It's no doubt about it. Like, it's all about taking care of each other. Like, really, there's like backups to backups to backups to all the systems that you're like working on, and everyone's like looking out for each other, but you're also like holding each other accountable to make sure like everyone is doing those checks and that's being done thoroughly. And because like one valve being left open floods a submarine, and or there's a fire. So
Yep. And that's what I notice about the submariners that I work with is they're very good at competing and being cooperative. They'll help each other out. They get along well. They play hard. They work hard and they play hard, right? And then they hold each other accountable, because you can't have the one guy screw up, because otherwise you only got so many people, right?
Yep.
And if one guy makes a big mistake, everybody goes down with them. So
Yep.
critical systems, right? Critical systems.
Exactly.
That's why you have backups to backups. That's kind of how I run my systems. I run primary systems and I run backup systems. In case the primaries fail, you got a backup, right?
Exactly.
That's-
That's definitely a military mindset.
That is definitely military mindset. And before we start the podcast, I go through a checklist.
Yeah,
That's
I totally
definitely-
believe it. I totally believe it. Everything that I've seen like is very methodical and thought through, and like it's a lot of work, but I know it's worth it to you. So I can
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah. And the developers kind of like that. I was very thorough with checklists. So that way, like I did the training materials and procedures and the admin and all that kind of stuff, make sure that the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. That way the developers could focus on developing, and I would keep the management out of the cubicles, right? Keep the management where the management belongs and let them do their thing, creating, really cool software. So
Yep, and it carries over into everything you like. I'm doing now too, like software engineering. When you do standard operating procedures, you need to have like operational checks to make sure, or processes to recover from operational problems or things like that. So it's very, it's been very useful to have those skills.
Yep. And does it also get you in the habit of testing? Like,
Oh yes, everything I do is I write tests for it, and I'm, even in my mobile engineering stuff, we're writing a lot of like tests because it helps with preventing like QA or other team members who are relying on that. You want to have a robust platform for what you're working on, and it's really important to like think about those things ahead of time instead of having like a very fragile dependency that's constantly breaking on you. So
yeah, you want it to be rock solid. And so you worked with video games prior to getting into Cardano. You worked with military systems and stuff like that. And now you've built CardanoPy. What does CardanoPy do? Tell us about that.
So CardanoPy is basically, well, I guess I should step back for a second. When I first got into the Cardano community, I wanted to run a stake pool, and that was kind of like my intro into the Cardano ecosystem. And I knew I wanted to run a stake pool because I wanted to get access to the on-chain data. And when I started like digging into that problem and trying to understand how to do that, I realized there's a lot of like technical things that I had to do still to just get that working. And I really just wanted to write like D-apps, and like that's kind of like my actual end goal for the things that I want to do. But I also understand I need access to the on-chain data. I need access to the APIs and the stuff. And so that's when I started realizing like for what I was trying to do, which is through Python and all the big data science tools and data engineering tools, through that process, I want to make that as easy as possible for me to iterate and, actually make my own kind of project in the future around Cardano. Which I think is still a little bit off because of smart contracts and stuff, in the next 4 months or so. But I wanted to kind of prepare for that. And, CardanoPy was kind of the way that I was thinking about it. I'm always building platforms. That's the way that I think. I want to build things and share them and collaborate. And that's just my mentality. But that's kind of where that came from. But yeah, basically you can use CardanoPy to, using Python 3 and Docker on your local system or on your remote servers like AWS and GCP, to spin up passive Cardano nodes, and then you can start using the APIs like the wallet API, the DB sync, a lot of the tools that are kind of complex to like put together and operate. Like you can just use those through the CardanoPy ecosystem. It is still in like pre-alpha. It's like pretty early, so you can do some of these things already. But I wouldn't. I'm still working on the project. It's still active development.
Okay, so you needed a way to spin up a Cardano node easier. It doesn't have to be a pooled node, a leader node. It doesn't have to be a relay. It's just basically if somebody needs a node, a Cardano node for any reason, development, or whatever it is they're trying to accomplish, they can fire up one of these, they can use CardanoPy to do that.
Yep, exactly. And also it's built in a way that it's extensible, so you can, and composable. Those are kind of like two core elements of this. So you can actually extend the Docker image. You can, you look at the Docker image that I created, and instead of using Python, you could do something else with it. But you could also use Python and take advantage of the tools that I built on top of it. But it's built in a way that you can easily kind of compose these things or extend them with your own stuff. If you look at the actual IHK Docker image, it's very secure. It's like, it's made for what it's supposed to be doing, but it doesn't have those kind of qualities. So it's actually not easy to do a lot of those things, which is why I ended up creating, CardanoPy and trying to make that easy for development.
Okay. So if viewers who are here, if you're a developer, let's say you're Professor Tinker Potts or you're a professional software engineer, check out the links down below in the description. Bourke has his YouTube channel over there where he shows you how to set it up. We're not going to go through a full-blown demo here. He has a really awesome demo. It's easy to set up. It's quick to set up. Over on his YouTube channel, link down below. We also have the link to your GitHub. Okay? We also have the link to his social media outlets. So if you need to get a hold of Bourke, check out his information down below. He's a very friendly guy, obviously. He's here on Cardano Live with me. And you bet, man. So please check out those links down below and check out his GitHub and his Twitter and all that kind of, and definitely his YouTube channel. And like and subscribe over there on his YouTube channel if you like his videos. They're great videos. They really are, man. I got a kick out of it. And that's what I saw. I was like, man, this guy made some really good stuff. And you're launching on Project Catalyst?
Yep. I have I submitted originally in Fund 3. My project was called Cardano ETL, and I kind of got a lot of good feedback from VCAs and CAs and the community in general. And that kind of evolved into the more generic, CardanoPy version of it, where it has some of the same kind of qualities, where it's a data oriented and extracting data is important, but it also has all the kind of more useful general developer, friction type stuff that I'm working on.
Okay, so you're kind of a veteran here at Project Catalyst and working with Python and working with Cardano. So for the benefit of the viewers, first tell me, what is a CA and a VCA or BCA? Who are those folks, and how does that work with Project Catalyst? And we're going to lead back into the CardanoPy project that you're working on. So,
so Project Catalyst is like an opportunity to submit proposals and actually potentially get ADA funding for your proposals, but there's actually a process around it. And one of the steps near the end is when you get to the assessment phase of your proposal, and they use that to create ratings before it gets into the voting app, like general ratings. And those ratings come from veteran community or community advisors and veteran community advisors. They're kind of like putting their expertise and their knowledge into looking at your proposal in depth and giving you feedback. And that eventually turns into the eventual rating that shows up in the app that you use to register to vote and actually vote. And it actually means a lot, because right now the voting app is sorted by those ratings. So it means a lot to actually have a solid proposal. But what they're doing is they're looking at like key questions, like, does this actually address the challenge that we're doing? Do we think there's like a potential to actually succeed at this project? Like, what's your experience? What's your plan? How do you plan to use the funding? And they're giving you that kind of like critical feedback. And the first round, actually, I got around a 3, an average of a 3 out of 5. And the second round in Fund 4, I got a 4.5 and had a lot more positive feedback. And I really just tried to listen to not just the community advisors, but the community, and to understand kind of their problems. And then I went and experienced it. I just started doing stuff. I wanted to actually experience it and really understand their feedback as holistically as I could. So it's been very useful. But yeah, they're there to provide feedback for proposals that's used in the rating and the voting app.
that's a pretty champion rating there, 4.5 out of 5. And Fund 4, the registration for Fund 4 is coming up shortly here. I think in the next week. I got to check the calendar. And the community advisors and the veteran community advisors is almost like a peer review process where Cardano's taken all the lessons learned over the last 5 and 6 years and all the great things that have been developed on Cardano. They've extended that out into the community through the advisor program that's used on Project Catalyst, so that people can get better proposals and a better defined product that they're capable of delivering. And that helps set Project Catalyst up for success, but more so mitigates the risk, right? Because all new projects have risks associated with them. And the community advisors are helping the developers and the entrepreneurs on Project Catalyst mitigate the risks that come with launching new projects. So great work, by the way, in doing that. So Fund 4.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, please check it out, and kudos and vote if you have a chance.
I got to get a link to that down below. I don't have it down there. I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
I did not link it in the description, but I'll get it in there. Yeah. So your CardanoPy. There's a few technical things people might be interested in, like it uses Docker containers. What's one of the benefits and possibly any of the drawbacks to using Docker containers launching your Cardano node? And what are some other features of CardanoPy that people might find interesting?
Sure. So Docker, I come from the gaming industry, and a lot of my experience around Docker comes from that, more specifically. But being able to like scale up servers very easily, be able to re-provision those containers on different types of machines. So like smaller machines or larger machines, depending on kind of the things you're trying to do. So for like DApps and those kind of applications where it's not really about like a stake pool, it's more about like the operations of the things you need to do, like extracting lots of data from the projects. Like it's actually useful to be able to have a portable container to use this and run this in like very different environments in AWS and GCP and locally. And so Docker actually gives you that kind of flexibility. Instead of needing to, for example, like build and install Cardano on my local Mac, I can just pull the Docker container and run it locally on the Mac, and it's essentially like I'm running it, on my, like I built it for my Mac. I do think there's definitely benefits to doing the building the nodes. So I think there's always a trade-off with technology. There's actual use cases as to why you would use one thing or another. But I kind of suspect for like the passive nodes and the people that are going to build businesses on this stuff, like they're going to want to use Docker, generally speaking, to be able to spin up lots of these very easily or upgrade them easily. Like it's a very useful workflow for development.
Okay, yeah, so that's some nice advantages to it. So if I build it locally, if I build a Docker container locally on a Ubuntu 20.04, for example, and then I get a cloud server that has Ubuntu 20.04, does it make it any easier for me to deploy it on that cloud server?
It actually doesn't matter because the cloud server, it's actually baked into the container actually bakes in all of the dependencies for it. So as long as you have ability to run the Docker container, like in a Google Cloud, it actually doesn't even use Docker to run the containers. It's a very efficient, secure system. AWS, I think, is a similar type of flow. Locally, people usually use Docker to run the Docker containers, but it's actually very portable. It just runs. It's baked. The OS is like baked into the container itself. So like it doesn't matter where you run it. It's always going to be the same thing. And that's like one of the software engineering principles of being able to make it portable and not have to worry about risks of like, oh, did I build it on this machine? It has this dependency and this other thing was installed. And now you have to worry about all these other, crazy concerns. I didn't really answer your other kind of like your full question, but yeah, that's basically what the Docker side of it is. And then CardanoPy really is just like a collection of Docker containers. There's really only one main container, which is the CardanoPy container for running the Cardano node. But you can also add on compose additional container capabilities like the DB sync functionality. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but a lot of these like pool tool type things, they use DB sync to sync into a Postgres database, like all of the Cardano on-chain data, and then they provide like front ends for that. Like you can compose a Docker container on top of that, so you can have multiple containers running that have different kind of services and purposes, like the wallet, the DB sync, and other things in the future. So it makes it very portable to do those kind of stuff in a bunch of different environments. And so how I use it specifically is I actually run Cardano locally on my machine for all the development iteration to make it very easy to iterate and improve things. And then I deploy my CardanoPy to my stake pool, and I actually run my stake pool testnet and production using the same exact container. So I don't have to worry about different environments, those kind of problems.
Oh, wow. So is it easier to upgrade or is it harder to upgrade? Like we just went from 1.25.1 to 1.25.2. And notice any difference in easier or harder to upgrade?
Actually, it really depends on Cardano itself, because like Cardano does sometimes, make some breaking changes, depending on the upgrade process. Like for example, this last one, you had to actually resync the data. So for my example, like what I do is I actually just upgrade the tag in my Docker container. It kicks off a CI/CD job that builds the new container and tags it with the appropriate version. So that's really all I had to do to get the new container. And then it's publicly available. Anyone can pull it from that point. And then to do the DB sync part of it, where I had to the synchronization part of it, I actually, because I'm using Kubernetes, I just deploy to a new namespace, and I have a new namespace that has the multiple versions running, and I can swap them from being like block producer or not block producer. So that's how I managed to just do the upgrade. It was actually pretty straightforward for me, but it's really depends on what's coming with Cardano, because Cardano has upgrades sometimes that have very specific needs that you need to kind of focus on. So,
okay, cool. And for viewers who are not familiar, when he refers to the CI/CD and the namespace, CI/CD is the what? Go ahead.
It's a continuous integration and continuous deployment. It's like another one of these engineering practices for being very productive in how you do engineering. Like some people like write code and they manually deploy their software and they don't have like necessarily like test suites that are running constantly. Like the way that I generally develop is I do the CI/CD stuff first, and then I start doing my programming to actually like and I'm constantly like building and deploying these systems to test environments that are running tests. And so like it's just basically a constant process. So I'm actually developing through that process. I'm not actually have to like build and deploy and then go run it and test something. Like it's just continuously doing these processes, integrating and deploying. That's CI/CD.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess you have some experience with working with CI/CD pipelines and different namespaces. And namespaces are you can have like a test namespace, a development namespace, and your final deployment, which means it just puts a copy of each in the chunk, right?
Yep.
Then if you change your code, you write CardanoPy in Python, I'm assuming?
Yep. It's
Okay.
it's in Python. Yep. It's just a wrapper for the Cardano, Haskell build, and it just has access to the same functionality everyone else has access to.
All right. And then if you modify it, right, like on your box, you make modifications on your local box, then you can run it through the pipeline pretty quick, right?
Yep, exactly. So I can release new versions of CardanoPy very easily. It just automatically goes through this pipeline and into development releases, and eventually I can turn it into an official release where it tags it into as official version that people can download the official stuff. And I use that same process for myself, but the way I kind of expect people to use CardanoPy is not, and they could contribute directly to what I'm doing within CardanoPy, but it's just Python, so you can actually just add as a dependency to your Python project and use all of the same APIs in your Python code to deploy, to actually run Docker containers and run your node or access to your existing nodes if you already have them. So there's a lot of ways you can use the CardanoPy process.
Okay, cool. The CardanoPy process, and then we'll get into Catalyst in just a bit. Now, these Friday afternoon podcasts, it's kind of nice to have them casual, and you don't go too long on a Friday, but this is kind of fun. And my assistant here, Kyle, he has put in. He's my audio engineer. He put the link to the idea scale over there in the comments section in the chat. So check out the chat. That has the idea scale link to Bourke's project for CardanoPy. Go check out that link. Hop on over to Idea Scale. If you don't have an account on Idea Scale, go ahead and make an account. It takes a little practice to get the hang of it. And make sure you give Bourke some kudos and leave him some feedback on his project. Check out his GitHub down below as well. And check out his YouTube channel. Get some likes and subscribes over there on his YouTube channel. Okay. Oh, and Gary Golden is here as well. Gary, good to see you here. All right. Welcome, everyone. Lots of folks here. There's 32 people with us right now on a Friday afternoon. Good to have everybody here. And so one last thing we'll touch on before we wrap up, Bourke, and that is the Project Catalyst itself. You've been working with Project Catalyst for quite some time. And what is your favorite part? Like, what's the best part and what's the most challenging part? What's been your favorite part so far? And then what challenges have you had or overcome?
I think my favorite part's like actually fairly easy. Like it's the excitement around like the iteration and the like approach that they're taking to Catalyst. It's very easy, I think, to just say like, oh, we're going to have this governance model and everyone's just going to use it and expect everything to work perfectly. But actually what they're doing is they're taking an iterative approach with the community involved to learn what the right process is to have a governance. What does that mean to have a governance model? And like that's actually the thing that I'm most excited about with Catalyst is like the learning process and being part of that and really trying to understand like how this is going to turn into something in the future on the Catalyst side specifically. I'm very excited about Cardano in general. But I'd say that's probably for me the biggest thing, and the community's been amazing. Like I've had a lot of great feedback and people reaching out, and I've actually helped a few people along the way too. Some of the things I've been doing with DBSync, people are asking for copies of the database so they can like start up their process to get going on their projects. So I think it's really just the community and the kind of like the mentality of how they're approaching it. I really would love to have it all like done now, and it'd be great to have everything perfect from the beginning, but I think governance is like a very challenging thing to do right, and I appreciate that they're doing it that way. Probably. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, please continue.
On the downside, I think there's a lot of change, and so there's adds a level of confusion to certain things, and like sometimes it's just the schedules change. It's actually the first time I've seen that happen for the voting stuff, but I think they're really trying hard to do the right thing, and I can see it in everything that they're doing. And then also like there's actually an overlapping schedule, so which I actually now have come to appreciate, but they actually do multiple. It's like multiple funds going on at the same time, and they're overlapping, and so that adds a little bit of confusion to the community. I think in some cases where they're just like not exactly sure when is this finishing before this is starting, and why is like proposals going in now when we haven't even voted on the last fund. So I actually appreciate it because I think they're trying to iterate quickly and trying to learn. Like that's why I think I appreciate it, but I understand why there'd be some confusion with that too. So
Yeah, and I do have to say that Door has done a fantastic job in managing this entire process, and Sam with the technical support, right? Because Door is a large experiment. It is the largest DAO in the world. It is kind of like exploratory surgery, and they did say up front, things may break, things may get painful. We're trying to figure this out, right? This isn't it's the largest DAO in the world on one of the most advanced systems in the world. So if you're a developer and you get involved with Project Catalyst, take into account what Bourke has told us here. He has some experience. It takes a little bit of time. You go through a few funding rounds, right? You learn some of the pain points and you learn to get better at it. And eventually you go from a 3-star or a 3 out of 5 to a 4.5 out of 5. And as one of the commenters said, you get a sub-safe level code going on there. That's a very good level of safe to have.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
I think the community would appreciate. Like these are the Catalyst community would appreciate. Like it's very specifically like things will break. They'll lack documentation. They'll differ greatly between iterations. They'll disorient, overload, and inspire. And that definitely like that. That's like the first thing they talk about every single time. And I think it's very true. And I appreciate that they are upfront about how they're doing it.
Yes, yeah, and please be aware of that. Yeah, very good point. You could become disoriented. You could become confused by what's going on. It's okay because you're not alone. Everybody else is going through the same thing, and plus they have community advisors and veteran community advisors to help you get through it, and people like Bourke helping people out as well. So I appreciate all the work you do over there, man. That's pretty awesome. What about the future of CardanoPy? Is there anything that you have planned coming through these next rounds that you're either going to add or you want to move the ball down the field a little ways?
Yeah. So right now it's really just about getting to the V1 version of CardanoPy, where it's going to have the basic Cardano CLI functionality and all of that inside of Python, so you can use it in Python as well. And then also the DB sync, the same exact concept with DB sync and the wallet. So those are kind of the three critical parts of CardanoPy that I'm working on for V1. But after V1, like really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build a platform for things where I can actually create dApps and actually contribute to the Cardano use cases even more directly myself. And so eventually I actually want to get to like extracting data out of Cardano's on-chain and using it and publishing it to different data sources, and maybe even making oracles that like feed back into the system. So that's kind of like the future where I'm actually driving to at some point. But, for now I'm focusing on the V1 version and getting that stable. And I actually really want to build a community around what I'm trying to do. So if people want to contribute or have interest in Python, data science, data engineering type stuff in Cardano, like please chat with me. And I'd love to talk to you about it and how we can work together towards that vision.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great info. And I just learned something new as well. I thought, you were primarily doing Cardano Node. Does it currently support, or you plan to support, DB Sync and the wallet?
Yep, and the wallet. Yeah, those are on my roadmap of. I'm kind of just methodically going through. Like right now, I've done the basic CLI stuff and Kubernetes, so you can actually deploy to Kubernetes and Docker. And I'm also working on kind of more Docker stuff to make that even easier for people. And then the next phases will actually be like DB Sync functionality, wallet functionality. And eventually my own custom DB sync is actually one of the things that I'm working towards, where I can extract data out in more generic formats, so I can ingest that data into other systems like PubSub and Kinesis and other kind of platform tools.
Yeah, and just so people know, like Bourke has mentioned, DB Sync is used for things like Pool Tool. There's some benefits to using DB Sync if you need node data as opposed to running a full node. Do you know what any of the benefits are? What does DB Sync provide?
Yeah, so DB Sync is just a SQL database that you can run SQL queries against. So like the way Pool Tools would probably, I mean, I actually don't know. I've never looked at Pool Tools source or any of their stuff, but I'm pretty sure this is the way it works. They basically have a DB Sync server that's synchronizing with their passive Cardano nodes, and that database is staying in sync with their node and providing people access to run SQL against the on-chain data. And it's very useful if you're trying to look at like lots of different data from very specific cases. If you look at like one stake pool and like what's the rewards and the blocks for that specific stake pool, or what's the native token stuff, like you can like specifically query for the things that you need. And that's why DB Sync is very helpful for businesses and things like along those lines to build on top of Cardano. And but yeah, it's a little bit hard to kind of like get started, but I'm trying to make it as easy as possible to also use like DB Sync type like containers.
Okay, man, you know, it sounds like you have a really great plan moving forward as well. And what I'll do, since we're wrapping up in just a little bit, I'll let any viewers know if you have a burning question, please let me know over in the chat, both on Twitch and on YouTube. We are streaming to Twitch as well. Let me know if you have a burning question, and I'll talk with Bourke about that. Maybe we'll have an answer for you. And I do see a few others in there. CyberSoul says, I can't read the proposals for more than a few minutes. CyberSoul, I entirely understand. Bourke,
yeah,
we're humans.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a little technical sometimes, and I do the best I can to try to communicate what we're trying to do. I will say, like, really, what this is for like Python developers with data engineering or data science type experiences, and how they want to access Cardano and use Cardano for their own businesses. That's really what I'm trying to service. But I can understand like it's a little bit complex in some cases, and I do the best I can to try to communicate some of that.
Yeah, and you know, it's not just yours, Bourke. It's all of them. I think what he's referring to is all the proposals. I do find it very challenging sometimes when I get in there and I start reading proposals. The initial intention, or some of the intention, is you have a brief description. Okay, and also when you use the Catalyst mobile app, there's a brief description so people can get the gist of the idea. Okay, then for those who want to drill deeper, and the community advisors who are helping can read the greater detail to see what is going on here, what product is being delivered or developed, right? So it does take some time and patience, and you got to figure out what's most important to me. How do I sort out all these proposals? How do I find the diamond in the rough, right? So it's not just Bourke's proposal with the CardanoPy. There's a lot of proposals, a lot of people working on a lot of great stuff, and it is the biggest DAO in the world. Oh, Bourke, I want to point that out. $500 million, world's largest DAO, over 7,000 people, 13,000 participants, but hundreds and hundreds. I think there's 164 proposals that went into Fund 3. There were many, 60 some odd got it funding, or I can't remember how many it was.
Yeah, it's amazing. Honestly, I can't even keep up. I'm very actively in the community and really trying to pay as close attention to what's going on as I can, and I can't even really keep up with all the awesome ideas and proposals. Like the liquid stuff is epic. Super excited about that and where that's going, and Gimdal Labs, like things that they're doing are pretty amazing. It's just really hard to follow that stuff even as an active person in that community, but I think it's worth it. So I think if you have time to just even like find something that's interesting to you and spend a little time reading into more and actively engaging with that community, I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, it is. And people can sort by subject area. So, don't belabor yourself for hours on end reading all the details of the proposals. You can sort and get a general idea of what you find interesting, what you think will benefit Cardano. Then once you find those subject areas, drill down into it. And that's kind of what I do. At least that's just how I manage data, because it would take an extremely long time to read every single one of them. And it is very hard for people to do that. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so Christoph says it's a full-time job reviewing these things. Yeah, it does take some work. Golden SETI asks, Do you have any nodes running on a RockPi? Are folks still using it? I have my comments. Bourke, what do you think, RockPi?
I'm not using RockPi. I'm actually deploying mine to cloud providers like AWS and GCP. My node is actually in GCP, but I'm just doing it for test and verifying everything is working. And I use it locally as well. But anywhere you can have run Docker or like Kubernetes or one of these infrastructure platforms that runs containers, you can run this. So as long as you can run that, then you can actually run the container.
Okay. Yeah, and my comments for that is no, don't bother with the RockPi.
Okay, yeah.
With 126.1, the latest version of the node, the minimum RAM requirements went up. It was 4 GB. Now I think it's 6 or 8 GB of RAM.
Yep.
Then there's the compute time. It depends on if it's a passive or a leader. If it's a passive-only node, you might be able to get away with the RockPi or an enhanced RockPi or one of the top-end RockPis for passive-only node. But I would not run it as a primary block producer node or as a relay that you must rely on. Like passive only, just collecting data, yeah, you could probably get away with it. But if you're running some heavy duty stuff on the Cardano mainnet, I would not mess around with the RockPi. Get something a little stronger, get a good cloud server, get a good virtual VPS, right? Or a good piece of hardware to run it on.
Yep.
Okay, so they got one more question there from Johan Weiss, and we are going to wrap it up. All right, sound good, Bourke? And there's a
Sounds
question
great.
that says, I think we should he says, Rick, I think we should start talking in terms of ADA. Regardless, it's the largest, going for number one. That's a great way to wrap it up. Bourke, you got anything else for the audience today, for the folks, the viewers who are with us today?
Just if anyone's interested in contributing or like learning more about what we're doing, just please reach out, and I'd love to talk to you about it. And I'm excited about the Python side of this and what I'm trying to do, and I'm happy to talk about it. People have ideas, so.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. And thank you for developing on Cardano. You're leading the way. You're setting a great example. And you have a fantastic project running over there in Project Catalyst. CardanoPy, everyone. That's Bourke. Check out his YouTube channel, link down below. Check out his GitHub. Check out his products. And it looks like CardanoPy it's growing legs and it's going somewhere. And it's got 4.5 out of 5 rating at this point for Fund 4. So we'll see how that goes. I'll be looking forward to it with Fund 4 voting. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us on Cardano Live this afternoon. I appreciate you having here. We got a lot of great episodes coming up next week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, about 12 noon. So between 12 noon Eastern or 1600 UTC, 1200 Eastern time. So check out Cardano Live, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I will shift to Tuesdays and Thursdays sometimes, depending on the guest schedule as needed. Y'all have a great Friday afternoon, and be sure to like and subscribe down below. Take care, everyone, and thank you, Bourke.